Did you know that 2020 is the first year in a decade to not see the release of an Avengers movie? Since Iron Man 2 in 2010, every single year has seen at least one film release in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and whether you like the movies or not, it's kind of become a tradition. But in 2020, we were supposed to have a Black Widow movie in May, The Eternals in theaters right now, and at least one Disney Plus series, all of which has been pushed back indefinitely. Well, we don't have the MCU Black Widow movie, but I can show you a Black Widow movie. I've spoken in the past about Marvel Anime, an experiment between Marvel and the studio Madhouse. The anime line resulted in a really good Iron Man series, a watchable Blade series, Garbage Fire Wolverine and X-Men series, and a horrible Iron Man movie that I reviewed a few years ago. The final product of the Marvel Anime experiment was the movie Avengers Confidential, Black Widow, and Punisher. At least I think this is the last one. I've seen listings for some kind of Disc Wars movie where the Avengers seem like Pokemon that may have come out after, and I've seen scenes of some way more recent Captain Marvel anime. This is the last Marvel anime thing that I care about, we'll say that. The film opens with the Punisher listening to a news report about gang violence before reading about himself in the newspaper. Punisher, hero or murder? Either a glaring typo in the first 20 seconds, or someone thinks the Punisher is the literal physical embodiment of killing people. It wouldn't be the dumbest reinvention of the character, but it turns out that also reading the article is this pair of boobs! Oh, never mind, it's Black Widow. After an actually pretty neat opening credit montage introducing our main characters, she's a reformed Russian super spy and he's a vigilante avenging his murdered family on criminals all over, we cut to the Punisher mowing through a warehouse going after... I have no idea. But I do know that the Punisher has contracted Youngblood's disease! Wow, this shot looks really familiar. And how does the Punisher escape this certain death situation? By just blowing up the whole building. Oh, holy crap! Black Widow has an invisibility suit! What an awesome power that she will never ever use for the rest of the movie! The Punisher grabs Kane, this big-time arms dealer, but Black Widow and a S.H.I.E.L.D. strike team drop in. They want to interrogate the dealer to get intel on his bosses, but Frank refuses because, well, he's an ass. I want to shoot this guy! Finders keepers, you jerks!
No court or prison, just a bullet.
You're so short-sighted, Castle. Open your eyes.
Wow, the voice acting of this movie is not good. What drama school no-names did they get to voice this? Oh, Black Widow is voiced by Jennifer Carpenter? Well, voice acting isn't for everyone, I guess. Just ask the Peter Dinklage performance that they had to patch out of Destiny. The two heroes get into a fight in which Punisher very quickly reaches for his guns to shoot one of the Avengers to death, but they stop fighting when Nick Fury shows up.
Well then, Director Fury, you should know that I'll do anything to get the job done.
Good, Frank, good. Now try saying it like you're awake! You could make a drinking game out of how often the Punisher pontificates about how he's awesome because he doesn't play by the rules. Black Widow just tases Frank to make him shut the hell up, and because S.H.I.E.L.D. sucks at everything, Kane managed to escape despite being surrounded by agents.
As long as you were attacking low-level thugs, I had no problem with your methods and let you run free.
So S.H.I.E.L.D. ignores the Punisher because he's never gone after anyone important. I love how Fury basically just told Frank that he sucks. S.H.I.E.L.D. is hunting a terrorist group called Leviathan, which is dealing high-tech weapons including stolen S.H.I.E.L.D. laser guns, and Frank, being a vindictive ass, says this is all S.H.I.E.L.D.'s fault to be a vindictive ass.
Kane got away from us.
It happened when we were busy dealing with you.
This guy slipped past over a dozen S.H.I.E.L.D. units that were standing around doing nothing. I mean, I think this is more your fault. In between all the pissing contests is a decent exchange between Punisher and Fury laying out their differences in philosophy. Fury's methods take too long and leave collateral damage. Frank's methods are too short-sighted and street level to actually solve anything. This is like the one part of the movie where the Punisher has an actual point instead of coming off like an arrogant dumbass who cannot fathom the concept of going after more than one villain at a time. The Punisher agrees to help them track the arms dealer as long as he gets to go on the mission, so he and Black Widow head to the Leviathan base in Slorenia? That's a new one.
Leviathan is a terrorist organization that was formerly a secret division of Russian intelligence. They're involved with every evil deed known to man.
Abusive spouses, Leviathan. Marville, Leviathan. My dumbass neighbor who left the garage door open all night, the car unlocked, with the keys and their wallets inside, and it all got stolen? Leviathan! They sneak into the base and find a bunch of liquid tanks with live people inside, only for the Punisher to spot his murder crush and immediately go apeshit and storm off.
I'm not letting that low-life thug get away with this. Just back off and let me do things my way. You should know by now, I don't play by your rules.
Only a bureaucratic idiot would think it isn't a great idea for me to blow our chance to take down an entire terrorist organization to go after one small-time arms dealer. I'm a genius.
I'm not gonna let you go rogue on us.
You could just tase him, shoot him with your wrist tasers. Okay, it is now officially your own fault when he goes and blows your cover. All right, you son of a bitch, I'm gonna gut you like solar flare! Ah, dick! Letting him obviously reach for a weapon, the one flaw to my brilliant plan. So while Punisher charges through the base massacring guards because this place has never heard of alarms, Black Widow goes to hack some computer data and runs into the main villain, Elias Starr. If the name sounds familiar, it's because he was in Ant-Man and the Wasp as Ghost's dad for about 10 seconds before blowing himself up, and that was a much better showing than he has in this movie. So, brief pop quiz here. Who's the worst supervillain that you've ever seen in a comic book movie? Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor and his "we were told last minute we couldn't use the Joker but damned if we're gonna cut his scenes" mannerisms? Vuk from Dark Phoenix comes to mind, if only because she's such a non-presence in that movie that I doubt most of you even remember she existed. I really hated the Technovore, who acted like an aloof douche, changed motivations on a whim, and was so catastrophically overpowered that the plot completely imploded around him. Good choices. And also all wrong. Elias Starr might just be the single worst villain I've ever seen in a comic book movie, and here's why. In this movie, Elias Starr is a SHIELD scientist who was dating Black Widow, but he was insecure because she's an Avenger and a big-time superhero, and she was always going out on missions instead of spending all her time with him. So Elias developed a serum to give himself superpowers, and then he faked his death, joined a terrorist organization, and made an army of super soldiers to sow rampant destruction and take over the world. Also, he could finally impress and be equals with Black Widow and be worthy of her love. Yeah, show of hands, who else sees the flaw in this guy's plan? The dude didn't feel like he was good enough to date one of the Avengers, so he gave himself superpowers and became a terrorist instead of using his powers to join the Avengers. Of all the dumb supervillain plans, became evil to woo his girlfriend has to rank pretty high up there.
I'd be someone who's finally worthy of your love. Someone who is finally worthy to stand by you.
And the dude cannot figure out for the life of him why Black Widow doesn't want to take him back. Go figure that a renowned superheroine would have a problem with him kidnapping civilians, brainwashing them, mutating them into super soldiers, and selling them as slaves to terrorists. I mean, who could possibly have seen that coming?
The serum for strengthening the body, to make sure it worked. I tested it on myself.
Yeah, and unlike that Danny Lamb dumbass, testing my experiment on myself didn't drive me insane. I'm just as sharp as I ever was. Yeah, I would have aimed a little bit lower there. Also, giving himself super strength does not explain how a squishy nerd scientist learned enough martial arts to whoop Black Widow's ass. She lands a total of like 1 hit and only barely survives by tasing him several times. Well, it turns out that while Black Widow has been pissing around with her ex, the Punisher has somehow managed to blow up the entire base off screen and materializes out of thin air to save Black Widow from dying from a fall. So the place explodes and all the important characters escape. Although all those stasis tanks with abducted spies probably blew up too. I'm pretty sure Frank just murdered dozens of innocent people. Punisher managed to make off with Kane's phone, but they can't hack it on their own, so they go to an underwater shield base to meet one of Black Widow's contacts. And hey, Punisher manages to make a friend because they were both Marines. I'm sure nothing tragically ironic will happen to his new bro friend. Unfortunately, it turns out that Black Widow's contact is Amadeus.
Wake up, I need you. Huh? Oh, hello there, Agent Romanov.
Amadeus is a boy genius who's used for comic relief because he's got a raging boner for Black Widow. And given how often the camera focuses on her ass, crotch, and boobs, I can't say I blame the kid.
Yahoo! No kidding. I'll give you some tips, though, so you can compete better next time. I can teach you how to transmit my genius brain impulses to your... I've got an idea. How about a date to teach me? Oh, darn it. Listen... I have low blood pressure, and I don't work well right after I wake up.
Too bad. I had something special in mind as a reward.
Hey, I'm feeling a lot better now. Kirby's a kisser, that's for sure.
Wait, he named his dog Kirby? Oh, fine. I won't do it. Amadeus hacks Kane's phone and sets off the solar flare thingy again, only it turns out that it's a mind control trigger that makes the Punisher go apeshit and start murdering everyone. That had nothing to do with the mind control, he was just fed up with Amadeus. For some reason, the mind control only works for exactly 3 minutes until the phone self-destructs, which seems like a really bizarrely specific and useless form of mind control. But it's lucky for Black Widow because she seems to have forgotten that she has taser darts that could easily subdue Frank, and she doesn't even try to use them. But oh no, Frank killed his new Marine friend. How tragically ironic. While the Punisher sits in a jail cell having a sad that he killed some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and thus by his own stupid-ass code he must die, Black Widow fills in Nick Fury on what they know. Apparently Fury knew that Leviathan might have access to mind control technology, so he intentionally sent in the Punisher and Black Widow because nobody would give a shit if either of them turned.
Even if one or both of you ended up getting brainwashed, we'd be able to deal with it.
Okay, 1, Black Widow is the only expendable Avenger you feel comfortable sending in to get brainwashed, and you tell her this to her face? Fuck you, asshole! And 2, I have a comic that Fury really needs to read if he thinks that a mind-controlled renegade Punisher is no big deal.
I think the same thing was used on Castle.
But right now, I'm being pressured to lock him up for life and throw away the key.
Hello? Dude was being mind-controlled? Did we learn nothing from a brainwashed Carol Danvers running off with her rapist son, boyfriend, that people being brainwashed are victims who are not responsible for their actions? Avengers number 200, that actually happened. Fury pulls the heroes off the case, it's spy movie law, but Natasha breaks the Punisher out of his cell to go after Leviathan.
But look at me now. I killed 3 innocent people in the process. And for that, I need to be punished.
Again, mind control! Instead of blaming yourself for being mind controlled, how about you blame the guy doing the mind control? The heroes head to one of Punisher's sources to learn where Leviathan's going to auction off the super soldiers. I only bring this up because they pass by a stand with some Avengers toys, and the Punisher gets an action figure. Natasha does not. Even in fiction, there's no Black Widow merchandise. They learn that Leviathan is going to auction its super soldiers to some villains in Madripoor, an island of criminals that the anime series like to use as a setting a lot. And on the way, they see news footage of the soldiers wreaking havoc in Dubai as a test demonstration. Even worse, Nick reveals that the super soldiers were created using DNA from the Avengers, so they're gonna be really tough bastards to kill. Punisher and Black Widow start sneaking into the auction, but they get cornered by the super soldiers. Oh man, it is going to take all the legendary strategy and skills of these two famous superheroes. Or, unpowered human can just walk up and punch two of them out cold.
Frank, don't kill them!
I have no choice.
And then a second unpowered human can just mow a bunch of them down with completely normal bullets. And then they can just start going down to one bullet in the leg apiece. Super soldiers, my balls! How did the cops and soldiers in Dubai have so much trouble fighting these things? Do they only have BB guns down there? Oh, and you know how Nick Fury was worried about the mind control and couldn't send in any of the useful Avengers? Well, Amadeus invented magic contacts that block the mind control, so they send in all of the Avengers. That plot point went nowhere, and now our main characters are officially useless to their own story.
Maybe he doesn't have a brain to wash.
And really, since the mind control is based on stolen S.H.I.E.L.D. research, they should have been able to whip this up before the movie started and avoid the plot altogether. Black Widow tracks down Elias and they fight again, with Elias whining incessantly like a little bitch.
I did this, all of this, just for you! And now, after all this, you turn your back on me! Why? I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you!
What was wrong with that? Was it too much to ask?
Will you shut your goddamn pipe hole? Are you kidding me with this guy? Someone please tell me that Black Widow gets a better villain than this whiny loser in her actual movie? Tell me Taskmaster isn't only out to kill Black Widow because she dumped him or something? Widow manages to pound some sense into Elias and point out, "Dumbass, if you weren't a supervillain, I'd go out with you." So he turns good again. Huzzah. Elias reveals that he's got a kill code to stop the super soldiers. Yeah, that code is called "Send them into a fight with literally anybody armed with a weapon." The auction gets underway with famous Avengers villains Baron Zemo, Graviton, a winged griffin man, dude with a scythe for a hand, and Dracula? I have no idea who the rest of these people are. But not so fast, because the Avengers are on the way! Either that or the Reading Rainbow. Hawkeye blows open the bad guy's base, and Iron Man, War Machine, Thor, and Captain Marvel fly in to stop the loser army. And much as I hate to admit it, this climax is kinda fun. Energetic action, fun cameos from other villains joining the fray. Even though the Avengers are so marginalized that Thor, War Machine, and Captain Marvel have 0 lines between them. Actually, I just realized Hawkeye's entire contribution to the final battle is to blow a hole in the wall for 4 Avengers that could much more easily have blown a hole in the wall themselves. But sure, Black Widow is the expendable Avenger. There's also a fun callback to Rise of Technovore when the Punisher joins the battle.
Next time Stark asks for help, I'm gonna put a bullet in him.
And it's just as nice to see that you're still bulletproof, Stark.
They don't even try to pretend that there's tension to this final fight or like there's any threat to the Avengers. Say what you will about the CG battles in the MCU, but they usually stress the Avengers being overwhelmed by sheer numbers, and a few people will come close to dying at least once. Whereas here, all these uber-powerful super soldiers very blatantly just stand completely still waiting to get shot, and none of the heroes takes a single hit.
Hulk hate Graviton!
So while the Avengers curb stomp our loser bad guys, Black Widow and Elias fly in a new main villain because Elias was too much of a ninny to carry the film. This is Orion, the head of this particular branch of Leviathan, and he's just some crazy guy in a dumb-looking Cyclops armor that turns up out of nowhere at the very end of the movie.
It is the strong who will prevail. We will make the rules, and we'll be the ones who carry out their enforcement.
Yeah, Thor and Captain Marvel are downstairs and could throw this guy to the moon and barely notice he was there. I don't know why Orion is supposed to be a threat, though the first thing he does is backhand Elias across the room. That's pretty nice. Widow and Elias manage to break a piece off the dude's belt and shut down the super soldiers, with super in the biggest air quotes ever, but he gets his second win and starts kicking their asses. Luckily, though, the Punisher shows up to continue being a dumbass.
No!
Why didn't you dodge? But don't worry, Black Widow, because the Punisher is here with swelling music to apparently convey that he's the real hero of this picture, and he single-handedly whoops Orion's ass in a handful of seconds because that big, ugly, thick armor suit can't stop a knife to the face. Between Rambo and Mortal Kombat 11 and this, apparently owning a knife and some guns is the greatest superpower in all of fiction. So Leviathan is thwarted, that ninny Elias is dead, but Nick Fury is pissed because he wanted Orion alive to interrogate.
I operate on my own terms, and I do what needs to be done when you won't.
Natasha, arrest him. You're accused of murder and you face life in prison.
Accused of murder? Don't you read the newspaper, Nick? The Punisher is murder! But Black Widow lets him go because they each do things their own thing, and I guess that's supposed to be profound friendship or something. And the Punisher finally gets to release his murder boner on Kane. The end! Avengers Confidential is okay, which puts it above most of the Marvel anime stable. The plot moves at a good pace and is constantly escalating. There's a good amount of action, unimaginative as most of it is, and the climax with cameos from other Avengers and villains is fun. The problem is the plot is full of a lot of stupid shit and threads that go nowhere, between the lamest excuse for a supervillain, the brainwashing that's fixed instantly, and the army of world-ending super soldiers that gets mowed down in droves. It's really hard to take the plot seriously, and it's not helped by pretty flat voice acting across the board in the English dub. For a team-up story, it feels pretty weighted in the Punisher's favor, between him doing most of the actual work taking out bad guys, the film going out of its way to stress that he's right about everything, and again, he takes out the villain single-handed in seconds. I mean, yeah, Black Widow gets plenty of fight scenes, but most of them are petty, pointless brawls with the Punisher, or fights with that ninny Elias, who ends up being almost completely pointless because the Avengers did not need help for the final battle. At the end, it just feels like if you pulled her out of the story, the movie would barely change. Plus, her storyline is all about her pining over an old boyfriend, which, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't really what you want to see in a Black Widow movie. That's closer to Saturday Night Live's parody of a Black Widow movie. But it's a breezy watch at about 78 minutes long, the animation looks pretty decent, and it's a competent, if wholly unremarkable action movie, so do what you will.
So disappointing.